Mm. Thank you, City. Mm. Mm. It's just such a pleasure to see one another. When I look on the screen and I see each of those little thumbnails representing your spirit and your joy and your life and your physical presence, it's just so unchy, juicy, yummy. It's really good. So today we're going to talk about a study. I don't know if any of you have heard about the Nun Study, which was done in the 80s, 90s, and up into the early 2000s, that has been used in so many ways as we have gone forward in our Alzheimer's, dementia, and quality of life studies. It was an early study that was done, but it has shown some components and some compelling pieces that are being used as we develop new and different types of studies and the inquiry that we have into Alzheimer's, dementia, quality of life issues that are so prevalent in our society these days. So I want to talk a little bit about this Nun Study. I was so intrigued. It came to me in several different ways, several different tracks that brought the name to me, and I was intrigued by the Nun Study. What's happening? And then it kept popping up. So I thought, okay, I think we need to read about the Nun Study. So I'm just going to share some of the highlights. There is a book out. I believe it's called The Grace of Aging, or Aging with Grace. I'll put it on WhatsApp, by Dr. David Snowden, who was the gentleman who did the study. He had been doing many different studies for years in the religious circles, and he had chosen religious circles for his studies all around health and aging, because he said there was a certain continuity in lifestyle and there was a longevity of being in one environment. So there was some consistency he could use to support what he was seeing. And he also seemed to just really enjoy working, particularly with these elderly nuns. He was just so connected to them. This study specifically took place at a convent near the Minnesota State University, and it was highlighted in a Life magazine cover around neuroscience and the brain in the 90s, when it was just starting out to be really that connection, and there was a lot of attention that was being given to neuroscience and the health of the brain. And he had been doing several longevity and successful aging studies already. And as he was doing those, he started seeing that this was an opportunity to include some studies around dementia and Alzheimer's. So he expanded in the 90s, he expanded his study to include these Alzheimer's studies. And what's come out of this book is specifically what he studied around Alzheimer's. And what was interesting is that he had already established a relationship with these nuns at this point, because he had been doing other studies. And they were there was one nun that said that they hadn't had children, that had been one of the things in their vows they had given up, but they contributed to the world in a different way, but that they wanted to really give over their bodies to this and their entire spiritual selves to this study. And like 80% of them donated their brain tissue at their death. So not only did they have this information about what their life had been like that he was able to use as foundational pieces for the study, he also then had the science of looking at their brains, which made this a really compelling study that told us so much more than we had had up to that date. So a few of the interesting things that in the study that I really was intrigued by. If you read the book, it's got a lot of science in it, and there's a lot of very definitive information about the brain science, which wasn't as interesting to me. I wanted to sort of know what's the bottom line in terms of what he found. And I just want to share a few of those because they really relate to what we're doing here as we gather in community and as we support one another, and the small ways in which we can impact our own health and healing. So we're always sharing with one another what are the things that, the resources that we have when when we're encountering whatever physical ailments and challenges we have, we've been sharing with one another. What are the ways that we are able to heal ourselves? And Fern spoke this morning in our sharing about visiting a particular resource in Santa Barbara that worked on energy and feeling that a new way of connecting the dots in our body of how do we make ourselves and contribute to ourselves being whole and healthy. So one of the first things that Dr. Snowden found as he interviewed and chronicled, one of the other backstory that's interesting about the nuns was that at this point, most of them were between 80 and 100 that he was studying in age, but they had been nuns since they were in their 20s. And so there was an archival set of information about them for 80 years or 70 years, and they had kept the convent had kept all of the applications and the writings and anything that was associated with each of the nuns since they had joined the convent when they were in their mid-20s, early 20s, some of them even before they turned 20. And so there was a whole foundational piece of information for him to go through about how they had responded to questions, how they wrote. They all were required as part of their joining the nunnery was to write an autobiography up to that age of what they had done in life and why they felt they wanted to enter into the convent and enter that lifestyle. And so there was a lot of writing that he had access to. And so one of the things that he noticed that they talked a lot about was that they all did was exercise. And because we know, of course, we all know exercise improves our blood flow, it brings the brain oxygen and the nutrients it needs, but the nuns were not doing power yoga, okay? The nuns were doing much more simple ways of keeping their body moving. And what he saw was that they were walking. They were doing their daily walks. One of the nuns decided that she would start walking at 70, and she was one of the ones that lived the longest and had the most interesting brain to study because it had the least amount of damaged tissue. And she didn't start walking till she was 70, but walking every single day, pick, choose, and exercise. It doesn't have to be that if I can't go to a really strong, exercise program somewhere that I just won't exercise today. Just walk out your front door, but do it consistently. Do it every single day. Take a walk, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, get out. It has so many benefits beyond what's happening physically, just the emotional and the sense of being part of nature and part of the whole, the unity of that. So really getting out and moving our bodies. It, as we know, reduces our stress hormones, it increases the chemicals that nourish our brain, and it offsets mood changes, depression. One of the big things that's seen in dementia and Alzheimer's is that there's a lot of mood depression, and not like necessarily clinical depression, just mood depression, and how we lighten our mood. How do we contribute during our day to keeping our mood up so that not in that I'm in a good mood, but that I feel a lightness of being. And exercise, as we all know, I'm preaching to the choir here, but just to remember that it's not just about your body and your mood, you're working your brain. This is important for your brain. And brain health is, in the end of life, it is one of the most challenging things that's happening currently in our society is what is the level of your brain health? How capable are you of sustaining your life in terms of being able to dress yourself and bathe yourself and recognize those around you? And what they found in this study that was another such interesting thing is that most people had some level, most of these nuns, when they took a look at their brain after their death, had some level of atrophy and tissue damage around the brain, but how that related to their external, how they were living their life, that it wasn't necessarily more damage, worse life at the end. Many of them had very deep damage and significant damage and were living up till the last day in very vibrant and alive and aware states. So there wasn't necessarily a correlation. And they talk about this as brain reserve. What capacity have we in our brain to be reserved, even when the tissue is being damaged by age and whatever other scientific things are happening inside our brain, that we can create by certain behaviors and activities such as exercise, this brain reserve that allows us to still stay in this cognitive aware state, even though there's damage to our brain tissue. So it's really important for us to take charge of these, some small things that we can do in our life. They talked a lot about the nuns that had earlier dementia and what their earlier life had looked like, and what they had done to, not knowingly, who knew all this research, but how their lives had looked different. And so I just want to talk about a few of those. One of the things that they talked about was education. Higher education tended towards showing more ability in later stages of life to have brain function. And of course, some of that is, socioeconomic. If you have a good education, you probably have more resources, and you're probably taking care of yourself in different ways. And you're making sure that you're attentive to your overall health, including your brain health. But it was more than that. They talked about, he read these autobiographies and all the writings that the nuns had provided over the years. And what he saw, particularly in their beginning in their early writings, was this strong use of vocabulary and creative writing in terms of, and so this is something, Sheila, you can speak to, and as you are doing all your beautiful writing classes, that writing and using our brain to put words down on paper and using vocabulary is creating something in our brain that allows the connections to stay stronger as we age. So using your brain is one thing, but it's specifically around vocabulary and words. So crossword puzzles, great thing for us to be doing as we're aging, to keep your brain functioning in that way, to be grasping words. Words are one of the first things that go, not first, but one of the significant stages of Alzheimer's, when words go where we can't find the word we need to be able to describe what's happening. We just lose that capacity. So really looking at our writing. So education, while you may or may not have had education at a certain level at whatever point in our lives, we always can learn. So having that inquiry and that interest in learning something new, learning a new language, learning, doing the crossword puzzles, learning how to learning how to read music and play music, all these things create this brain reserve that we then can hold on to, even when we have genetic disposition, we have other things that are happening in our brain history and our brain health that might put us in what we would consider more likely to have dementia or Alzheimer's, or one of those memory deficits, if we are keeping our brain as vital as we can with exercising our brain. It has a very big impact on how much brain reserve we have to utilize as we age. A stronger brain has more reserve. And a stronger brain will show, even though it has tissue damage, will show that our cognitive ability in our later years still is strong or stronger. We have power in our healing and our health, ladies, starting now. We can start now, even if we haven't been attentive. I know many of you are, because you have family situations where you've been already dealing with this and you've been learning about it and having to confront it. But here are some ways, these are ways that we can be in our own healing of our body, mind, spirit, brain health. One of the things that this speaks to is in this being creative in our brain is not getting stuck in this thought process that we talk about. Why do we meditate? So that we don't get stuck in the brain mind process of looping around situations where we just keep replaying the same thing, the same story over and over and over, and our mind doesn't stop. It runs all day long, repeating these same questions and issues. And if I'd done it this way, and if not that, that's not helping our brain. It's not assisting our brain. It is not actually a good strategy for brain reserve. So if we want to keep our brains healthy, we need to utilize the resources that we're talking about with mudras and mantras and meditation, because we're stopping the diseased part of our mind's activity and leaving it open for the healthy part of this brain reserve potential. This is really important for us, because you only have so much brain space in a day. And if we use it up on getting stuck in some of these other ways of thinking, in judgment and fear and blame and shame and all of those, which have to be worked through us. But if we're stuck in them and we're not using our tools to work through them, we are actually influencing our brain health. Not a good thing. Not a good thing. So there's also an idea of low and high thought density, that when we're thinking higher order thinking, and so we want to get away, use your brain when you need it to solve situations where higher order thinking and creativity is necessary. And where does creativity come from? It comes from a stillness and a solitude and a rising up of divine inspiration through us, utilizing the brain that we have and all of the parts of us to have creativity. Creativity and higher order thinking and higher design for our life does not show up when it's in the middle of muck. It can't show up. There's no room. It can't get through. So really, really imagine that these practices that we're doing are so important on so many levels. We're running out of time, so I want to just give you the takeaway, my takeaway on this. Keep your brain engaged in new and stimulating processes. Validate the positive things in your life by writing them down, sharing them. There was a part of the study showed that the women who used certain words in their autobiography and in their writings throughout their time as nuns that were like hopefulness, gratitude, devotion, love, community, they were the ones in the end that lived longer and had healthier brains. So those words are impacting us. When we write those words down and we believe we're feeling it and we're aware of it, it helps to support our brain health. Positive thinking supports our brain health, not just in, I'm going to think well about everything, I'm going to have a positive outlook, actually living into that positive outlook. Keep the brain moving, keep the body moving, stay in community. They learned a lot about the support of these nuns in this tight community they were in, and that safe haven and a place to share their passions and devotion was really supportive to brain health. As much as you can look at that, it's hard to dissect all of that, but these were differences that they saw in that kind of community vis-a-vis individuals not in that sort of community. So our community is really important, ladies, for our brain health, our heart health, for all pieces of us. This week, move your brain, move your body. I know City's going to help us do that right now.
Yeah, and it was so interesting. People can really look up. Dr. Amen made a big point of it, that stress is really the biggest enemy for the health of our brain. You know, and I can imagine that these nuns, you know, there were a lot of stressors not in their life compared to our life situations. And then if we look at how we separate the generations in these times, we are losing exactly that which we need the most in age. It's the community, you know. So, and I think that's something we all have to look at. How do we create, except for our virtual community, really communities where everybody has the sense of safety so they can relax, their nervous system can relax, you know, and then their brain can relax, because otherwise the brain is always on alert, checking out if there's, you know, if someone is safe. So I think that's a very important point here. And going out to the air, walking, everybody can walk as long as possible. Good. I wanted to use our brain this morning and stimulate it a little bit. First by using the left and the right side, then we do a little sequence. And then I also thought it would be nice, there's a beautiful little meditation that brings us in the flow of life, because that's what the brain needs, is really being in the flow and the fluidity. You know, it was so interesting. I had a man working on my brain, literally, so to speak, on my head, let's put it this way. And at one point he said, wow, Siddhi, you don't have to worry about dementia or Alzheimer's at all. And I was like, what? He said, no, he said, your brain is totally swimming in fluid. And I never heard of that before. I was like, my brain is swimming in fluid. Oh, good. He said, yeah. And he said, if people face dementia or Alzheimer's, he can feel it because the fluid around the brain is diminishing. So then I thought, wow, that's an interesting concept, you know, so we're getting actually stiff and rigid around our brain if there is a disturbance there. So then I thought, this concept of being in moving through, like Nirmala shared, don't have thoughts what you could have done differently, because they don't do you good. And you can't change it anyhow. So it's waste of energy. So and I often look like into my life, but what and who gives me energy and what takes energy. Yeah, and that which takes energy away from me is not supportive for my brain health. So that's like a simple little trick that I have. Good. So the first exercise is very simple. We're just activating the left and the right side of our body. So you can have your left hand on the ground. You can have your left hand in your lap. Right arm is extended out to the side. And we just inhale, we bring our right arm up. I want the back of your hand facing to the left. And then the middle finger touches the floor. So you just inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Focus on the right side of your body. So by touching the middle finger to the earth, we're actually working the akash, the ether element, and connecting it with the grounding. Just do 1 minute. See that the arm is really straight, that there's no bend in your elbow. And what you're feeling is also that you're lifting your diaphragm, which will be crucial. Yeah, because if the diaphragm is restricted, the circulation is restricted towards the brain. Good, and then we just simply switch. Left arm was moving up and down. Now you feel the left side of your diaphragm lifting off your stomach. I like what Nirmala said, the nuns didn't do pretzel postures to stay, vital and healthy. No, they walked, walking, swimming, gentle movements. That's all actually our body needs. And it's good in between to get the heart rate going and to do those things. But often it's the simple stuff in life that makes a difference. Good. I want you now to bring both arms out to the side. That's crucial for our brain, is to crisscross in front of our body. So if you have elders in your surrounding, always make them crisscross their arms. And if the arms are too heavy for them, you can allow them to just go down here, yeah? But crossing in front activates the opposite hemispheres of the brain. I do this a lot with my clients, and I would even add the legs. And you will see how hard it is for people. So you start slowly. Good. Last minute, just keep the arms moving. It's great heart opener too. And always remember, when you go outside, just in between, just open your arms out to the side. Open the chest. Good, and then we slowly just resting our hands onto the knees. We clap our hand in front of our heart center, and then we touch the opposite shoulders. Clap back, and then touching opposite knees. Clap, cross over, touch opposite shoulders, clap, cross opposite knees. Very simple, like. Make sure you're switching the cross. And I get confused. Little itty bitty things will make all the difference. And when the mind comes in, you will lose it. That's very common. I lose it. Let's put it this way. The last one. Keep your hands in prayer pose. Just take a moment. Long, deep breath. You feel a lot of energy right now, probably. And now you bring our arms forward and the hands are in prayer pose. This is my sa. Then I bring my arms out to the side, parallel to the floor. That's my ta, palms facing up. Then I turn my palms down, that's my na. And on ma, I touch overhead my hands. So forward, palms touching is sa. I bring my arms out to the side, parallel. Ta, I turn my palms down, na, and ma. So it's sa, ta, na, ma. 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 Now we reverse. Sa, ta, na, ma. Yeah, so we go opposite. Arms overhead. Sa. Arms, palms facing down, out to the side. Ta. Up, na. Ma, forward. Sa, ta, na, ma. 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 Come back to prayer pose. Long, deep breath. So we just reversed. And that's what the brain sometimes needs, just doing things differently. Even if you take the same way to your shopping mall or wherever you go, switch it up. Go into neighborhoods that you are not familiar with and see that you're not using your GPS and just following your intuition, allowing your brain to really figure things out, because there's so much help now for our brain. We remember the times when we had to look at the maps, then we had to remember how that looked there. We don't do this anymore. We are always being guided, so the brain thinks less. So I wonder, so these are little itty bitty things you can do and you can share with everyone. They're totally safe. The other one, and I like to go with us now into the flow of life. We bring our left arm up and the left palm is facing upward. So the left arm is parallel to the floor. Yeah. Our right arm comes up, and as if you like, the right forearm, upper arm is parallel to the floor. The right palm is facing forward, right forearm is perpendicular. And then from here, you inhale through the open mouth while you swing your right hand towards your mouth. You inhale the life. And then your hands just go back in a circular motion. Just your right arm is moving. You inhale, open mouth. Exhale through the nose. Letting life in. Feeding your brain with each breath.
Parma prema madhurya namo nama namo nama Satyamai Parameshwari Parameshwari Anandamai Chaitanyamai Satyamai Parameshwari Parameshwari Parama Kripa Murtaye Namo Parama Kripa Murtaye Namo Parama Prema Madhurya Namo Parama Prema Madhurya Namo Namo Anandamai Chaitanyamai Satyamai Parameshwari Parameshwari Anandamai Chaitanyamai Satyamai
slowly come to an end. Rest your left hand into your lap. Right hand on top of it. Tip of your thumbs are touching. And for the remainder of our time together, we will just be in silence. Because that's the other beautiful thing for the mind and the brain. That we are just being silent. It's like a little mini vacation for our brain, keeping our eyes closed, having no input into our optical nerves. From a brain health point of view, you want to do this 5 times a day for 5 minutes, just closing your eyes, nothing else. Now see that you expand your exhalation. So that you can go deeper into the sensing of yourself. We're gently bringing our hands into prayer pose. Bowing to our heart. Bowing towards our breath, the gift of life. And we conclude our class with Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Inhale deeply. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. We wish you a beautiful Saturday, great week. Lots of love.